Hello and welcome. My name is Craig Guymon. Now that we've talked about how to deploy agents and how to acquire data and evidence from endpoints, let's talk about some of the reports that are available and some other types of ways to look at data within the Binalyze Air platform. While I'm in this endpoint details for Craig's computer, you can see that we've already gone over the acquisition of data and how to do scheduled tasks as well as the webhooks. In addition to this, you have the ability to perform timelines. This is yet another report that's available within the Binalyze Air platform. Before I go into the timeline, let me just quickly show you how to get to the report once a task has been completed. Once a task has been completed from the tasks list, you can simply go to the task in question and you can see details around it. I'm going to go back to some of my earlier collections on page 7 of this history, and I'm going to look for a full acquisition, which in this case is right here. I can click on the view report icon. That will then bring up the report for me to then view live at that particular point in time. I then have the ability to start looking at the drone findings and dig into each individual artifact to identify exactly why drone identified these items as suspicious, relevant, high, rare, or other finding categories. If I hover over suspicious in this case, you can see that SVC host is too small and it has suspicious process with unexpected properties. In addition to being able to see that, I can bookmark this item so as to be able to send it off an HTML report or send it off in a PDF or have others collaborate with me inside the web UI for the Binalyze Air console. I'm also able to see all of the parsed out information for this particular artifact and various others, including things like the command line arguments, the process path, whether it has a digital signature, who it's published by, and all of the appropriate times that are parsed from that artifact, as well as a hash that allows me to cross-reference that information across VirusTotal. Doing this gives me additional insight into the behavior, relations, and details of a particular artifact that might help me with my investigation. If I close this out, you'll notice that I then have the ability to perform other types of reports, including a timeline. The timeline can be created by simply clicking on the drop-down and choosing Create Timeline, or I can do this on the left side of the window by going to my timeline and opening up an existing timeline and adding other additional endpoints to it. In this case, if I go down to Liam's desktop endpoint, you'll see that the timeline details report will come up for this machine, including one other machine, in this case, Craig's desktop. The timeline allows me to filter out unnecessary or unwanted dates and times from this report so as to narrow down the scope of what's being seen. So if, for example, all I wanted to see was file accessed, file created, and file downloaded, I could deselect all the other items in this list and then simply say apply. And when I do that, it will then reduce down the timeline to show me only line items that include file accessed, file created, file downloaded, and file executed. Furthermore, I have the ability to search this to look for specific types of activity. Since this system doesn't have any malware on it, I'll look for the word StarCraft, which in this case happens to be a video game. When I type that in, it will then look across both Craig's desktop and Liam's desktop for any references to the word StarCraft, which will indicate that the execution and the prefetch files associated with the program StarCraft have been run in this case. I can select any line item and I can then look at the event details by clicking on the up arrow in the event details section of the window. This allows me to see pertinent information about whether the file exists, what the hash is, what the publisher of that particular file is, and the entropy level that might be useful to my investigation. Additionally, I have the ability to export this out, go to a specific date, or enrich this timeline with additional information including additional endpoints, off-network systems, CSV data from various sources such as firewall logs, SIM logs, SOAR logs, or EDR logs, as well as bringing in milestone data such as the time and date a specific activity took place that is worth noting. So for example, perhaps there was somebody within the organization that was recently terminated or recently hired, and you want to look around that date and time to see if any other activity took place. You can add that as a milestone, which will add a flag to the report, allowing you to then focus on all the other activity around that date and time. Of course, being able to use that in conjunction with my keyword and my filter allows me to narrow the scope even further. So if I wanted to look for activity across multiple machines using the word StarCraft that involve Craig G, I could do that by applying that filter, and now the end results will be much more narrow, allowing me to see only activity that involves Craig G, StarCraft at that particular date and time.